I am the light for the world. I am a shining and radiant spiritual being and shining light. The Buddha said, be a light unto yourself. Bishop Mark Andreas says, love arises naturally from the light of truth. As hatred is the product and the delusion of night, the two symbolic systems of light and truth and love and night and delusion and hate seem to be polar opposites, not connected to one another. However, in our lives, it is such that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it. The two are in relationship to one another throughout our lives. We have both throughout our lives. And in watching the news the last couple of days and what everybody was talking about and the memories for 20 years ago from the 9/11, it's evident that sometimes that dark is really prevalent, especially on anniversary times, right? We want to keep going back, and it's good to remember, and it's good to honor, and it's good to offer that space for grief. And yet, are we remembering the light that's within each of those and honoring each of those instances in our life, the big ones and the small ones, as new beginnings? Do we think of it as a new beginning, a chance for a beginning? Because even if we think about all the stories of creation from both the spiritual and the science perspective, there's some kind of violent act, right? There's some kind of bringing forth of both sound and light and waves and everything. And that was a very big new beginning. I don't know that we can always put them into categories until we've had some distance, right? Distances gives us a different perspective, a distance of time. And yet, to remember that we have a choice in anything that we see as either a great tragedy or a great joy, and to know that depends on our perspective at the time, because it's not just these human tragedies. You know, we have volcanoes and hurricanes and blizzards and fires and acts of violence and hate from one person to another. And all of those are parts of creation. So, and I know I say it every week, but we get to choose how we fit that into our realities and how we live it out from those instances, that we don't forget when we've had these big moments, these tragedies, we honor them, but we also remind ourselves that perpetuating the emotions in the moment may not be the best thing for us. The anger, the hate, the disillusionment, you know, to let those slide into finding, like what Nancy shared earlier, the gratitude in the everything, the gratitude in the everything. There were a lot of stories, if we watched in the past couple of days, of those gratitude moments, you know, and of the realization that in those tragedy moments, people got to choose how to spend the rest of their life. You know, what do we concentrate on? And there are so many good things that have come out of that, even not just like good big organizations or things like that, but also the choices in the moment for these people to how to live forward, you know, how to spend time with their family or what kind of job to take on, you know, how to spend their energy moving forward. Meister Eckhart says that for us to return to our beginnings is a return to God, because God is always in the beginning. And in that sense, God is always young and always new. So if these instances are beginnings, right, if they're a chance to change the page, the chapter, pick up a new book, God is always there. That essence is always there. And it's always a chance for something awesome, even in the midst of just what seems like overwhelming awfulness. Jesus instructs all of us to be light of the world, and that we should not hide our light under a bushel, and instead put it on a lamp for everyone to see. What kind of light would you like to shine? What kind of light? The Celtic people say that they adored the light. The light is the mother of life. And where there is no light, there can be no life. The scriptures say God is wrapped in a robe of light. Psalm 104 says, and in the first act of creation, God said, let there be light. God has been called the supreme fire that enkindles every spark of life. And Meister Eckhart says that God glows and burns with the divine bliss and the spark of the soul. Buddhist, the living Buddha is always shining, always enlightening trees, grass, birds, human beings, and always emitting life. Sufi mystic Hafez believes our destiny is to turn into light itself. Sometimes for light to really be seen, it needs to be a tiny bit dark, right? In order for the light to really shine, sometimes there needs to be a moment of total choice to light the candle. I'm not saying these things that happen in our life aren't awful, right? But they do give an amazing opportunity to be more and to really share that light. And to know that we find it in ourselves in those really quiet moments. You know, we talked a lot the last few weeks about that being quiet and defining that heart space. And yet that is exactly where it is. And when we find it in ourselves, in those silent times, in those really quiet, not bustling, quote, dark times that we choose to be with ourselves, it's really much easier to shine at when we're hit head on with those darkness. So how are we sharing our light within grief? How are we remembering times of tragedy while also recognizing light choices within those tragedies? I was listening, you know that all this month, a lot of, just as a reminder, a lot of I'm drawing from the works of Matthew Fox, that in his work. And he offered this example. He said at the end of World War II, and I love these examples because the history major in me went, yes. But at the end of World War II, instead of beating the losing side into total nothingness and total submission, right? There was an effort to help each other rebuild. There was an effort to put compassion before the hatred and revenge. Even though it was ridiculously awful, we know what came out of World War II. At the end of it, they said, this is enough. And people came together to rebuild each other. And those countries that were considered the losing side are now some of the most prosperous and progressive countries on the planet because of that compassion, despite the awfulness. And after World War II as well, the United States had in its possession the atomic bomb. And it showed exactly what that weapon could do. And that all over the place was a bunch of awfulness. And yet, instead of saying, I have this weapon and you better do what I'm telling you, the leaders at the time said, let's join the UN and try to figure this out so these kind of things don't happen again. Now, none of those things are totally perfect. I'm not saying they're perfect. And we could, go back and forth all day long about the positives and the negatives of such organizations and things. And yet, the choice to move forward in cooperation and compassion led to a lot of years of peace and led to a lot of years of saying, okay, this thing is happening. Let's try to figure it out. There's an effort to have that light shine. With each tragedy, there's an opportunity for this new beginning and new chapter. You know, we can choose to be angry all the time and put those things on a shelf of that really just stinks and I'm never going to deal with it. Or we could offer the compassion. Our choices can be compassion and cooperation, which leads to peace. That's the light part. And the part that heals ourselves as well as the world. The meditation at the beginning was all about sharing the light, right? To bring about that healing and bring about that recognition. Our life as prayer is the feeling of that compassion and cooperation. That is the light. We have an amazing, beautiful opportunity to share that. Our reading at the beginning, I am the light in the world, a brilliant example of the indwelling power of spirit. I sparkle with joy and love through my example. I am inviting others to shine. Through my example, I invite others to shine. I don't know if you realize sometimes the loudest voices are the angriest, most hateful voices that we're hearing, right? I don't know that being loud and in that way actually does anything but fuel more darkness, right? It's the example and the shining of the light that invites others, not the loudness. It's the shining. I don't know of any light that's loud. It's a sharing, it's an example, it's a how we're living our life. It's the choices we're making in the moment and how we're choosing to share time, how we're choosing to be in the little ways and in the big ways. Where are we showing up? And to know that we are not separate. How we think of ourselves and the world, who we recognize we are, is the key to solving all those mysteries. Niels Bohr says, every great and deep difficulty bears in itself its own solution. I love that. Every great and deep difficulty bears in itself its own solution. It's really hard to find solutions without the light, without some kind of beacon. And you are it. You are it. We learn from our interactions with the earth, with the universe, and the part of universe's life that is manifested as humans, which is you. So shine.